Have you ever wondered why you keep repeating the same pattern in your relationships? That pattern where he only seeks you out at night, where you become an option rather than a priority. That cycle you already know but seems impossible to escape. Perhaps right now you're looking at your phone, waiting for that message that always arrives late, when the lights go out and the world falls silent. And you ask yourself, why do I settle for this when I know I deserve more? Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant psychologists of all time, had an answer for you. He understood something fundamental about human nature that can free you from this emotional prison. What you deny submits you. What you accept transforms you. Let me explain why this pattern of only seeking you at night is deeply connected to your unconscious, and how, by understanding this connection, you can finally break it forever. Jung discovered that within each of us exists what he called the shadow, that part of us that contains everything we've repressed, denied, or are ashamed of. Those insecurities that whisper that we're not enough, that we should settle, that we can't demand more. And it's precisely this shadow that keeps you trapped in this destructive pattern. When you accept someone who only seeks you in the darkness, when you settle for crumbs of attention, it's not simply bad luck or coincidence. It's a direct reflection of what you believe you deserve in the deepest part of your being. Jung explained it clearly. The relationships we attract are mirrors of our relationship with ourselves. Think for a moment. When was the last time you looked in the mirror and recognized your worth without conditions? When was the last time you established a clear boundary and maintained it, even if it meant being alone? It's probably been too long. And as Jung discovered, we often prefer the company that hurts over the solitude that heals. This pattern of accepting less than you deserve didn't begin with this relationship. Its roots are much deeper, perhaps going back to your childhood, to those formative moments where you learned how love should be. Jung called these complexes, those emotional burdens we carry from our childhood that influence every decision we make as adults. Do you remember that moment in your life when you learned that love had to be earned? That first time you felt you weren't enough just as you were? Maybe it was an absent father, an overly critical mother, or that first relationship where you gave everything and received so little. These moments aren't just memories, they're programming that continues to dictate how you allow yourself to be treated today. Jung taught us that the unconscious always seeks balance. When you accept harmful patterns, it's not because you consciously desire them, but because your psyche is trying to resolve something pending, an old wound crying out for healing. It's as if a part of you believes that if you endure enough, you'll finally get what you've always longed for, unconditional love. But here's the truth that Jung discovered, and that can free you. You cannot heal those wounds by repeating the same patterns that caused them. You cannot win true love by allowing yourself to be treated as a midnight option. Transformation begins when you dare to look directly at that shadow. When you recognize those patterns not as mistakes, but as messengers. Every time your phone rings late at night, every time you accept those furtive visits, it's not just a date. It's an opportunity to awaken, to see what's really happening inside you. Jung spoke of the process of individuation, that journey toward becoming who we truly are, integrating all parts of our being. And this journey cannot begin while you continue to allow others to dictate your worth. While you keep waiting for that night message, you're avoiding the real work, choosing yourself. And what does it really mean to choose yourself? It's not simply blocking his number or swearing that this time it's different. It's much deeper. It's recognizing that every time you've accepted less, every time you've justified his absence during the day, you were trying to fill a void that no external relationship can fill. Jung explained it perfectly. Your vision will become clear when you can look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. It's time to wake up and see the truth of this pattern for what it really is. Not a complicated love story, but a manifestation of your relationship with yourself. Now, maybe you're thinking, but he's different. He has special circumstances. He's going through a difficult time. Jung identified these justifications as part of our defenses, those mechanisms we use to avoid facing painful truths, because it's easier to believe excuses than to accept that you're allowing someone to value you less than you deserve. Think about those nights when you've been available, waiting, anticipating. How have you really felt? Beyond those brief moments of validation when he finally arrives, what remains? Jung would talk about the anxiety of abandonment, that constant feeling of insecurity that never allows you to be at peace. Is that what you want for your life? An existence where tranquility depends on someone else's whim? This relationship where he only seeks you at night is not an accident or bad luck. According to Jung, it's a perfect manifestation of your wounded anima or animus, those masculine or feminine parts of our unconscious that shape how we relate romantically. When these parts are unbalanced, we attract relationships that reflect that imbalance. Perhaps you wonder, but how do I break this pattern? How do I get out of this cycle that seems endless? Jung offered us a clear answer. Through conscious confrontation with our shadows and the integration of all parts of our being. The first step is to recognize that this pattern exists and that you have been an active participant, not a passive victim. Every time you've answered that late call, every time you've accepted weak explanations, you've chosen to perpetuate the cycle. Not to blame you, but to empower you. Because as Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The second step is to understand what need is being satisfied by this pattern. Jung believed that all behavior, even the most self-destructive, serves a purpose. What do you get from the fact that he only seeks you at night? Is it the illusion of being desired? Is it avoiding the true intimacy that comes with a complete relationship? Is it confirming a hidden belief that you don't deserve more? Think about it honestly. Jung taught us that true transformation only occurs when we dare to look at those uncomfortable truths without judging ourselves. And if you listen carefully, your unconscious is already giving you clues through your dreams, your emotional reactions, those moments of clarity that come when you least expect them. The third step, and perhaps the most difficult, is to establish firm boundaries that reflect your true worth. Jung spoke of the need for a creative confrontation with what limits us. It's not about ultimatums or manipulation, but a clear declaration of what you will and will not accept in your life. Saying, "I will no longer be available only when it's convenient for you," is not a punishment for him. It's an act of love toward yourself. It's recognizing, as Jung taught, that true love is not possessing, but celebrating the other's freedom. And that includes your own freedom to choose relationships that honor you completely. Many people fear establishing these boundaries because they believe they'll lose the relationship. And they're probably right. If someone only values you as a midnight option, when you demand to be valued as you deserve, it's possible they'll disappear. But Jung would remind us, that's not a loss, it's a liberation. Because what you really lose is not love. True love doesn't hide in the shadows of the night. What you lose is the illusion, the fantasy that someday it will be different without anything changing. And that illusion, however comfortable it may seem, is what keeps you trapped. Jung discovered something fascinating about our relationships. We often seek in others what we deny ourselves. When you accept someone who only values you halfway, you may be reflecting how you value yourself. That's why breaking this pattern isn't just about changing your relationship with that person, but transforming your relationship with yourself. Imagine for a moment what your life would be like if you stopped waiting for those night messages. Imagine the energy you would free up, the peace of mind you would gain, the opportunities that would open when you were no longer tied to that phone, to that hope that withers every morning. Jung would call this reclaiming your psychic energy, that vital resource you're currently investing in someone who isn't willing to invest in you. Every time you break a limiting pattern, Jung taught us that you do something extraordinary. You free not only your present, but also your future. because these patterns don't just affect one relationship, but color all your experiences, creating a filter through which you interpret the world. Think about the relationships you could create if you no longer accepted crumbs. Imagine the type of connection that could flourish when you demand complete presence, not just nocturnal encounters. Jung firmly believed that when we free ourselves from restrictive patterns, we open space for experiences that previously seemed impossible. But breaking this pattern requires more than knowledge. It requires action. And the most powerful action you can take right now is to ask yourself, what would happen if I didn't respond next time? What would happen if I clearly established that I deserve more than being a midnight option? The answer to these questions will frighten you. You'll feel that internal resistance, that voice that says, but what if this is the last opportunity? What if I never find someone again? Jung identified these voices as our complexes trying to maintain the status quo, because even familiar pain feels safer than the unknown. But remember what Jung discovered after studying thousands of human lives. The greatest risk is not action, but inaction. It's not what you do that you'll regret in the end, but what you didn't dare to do, the boundaries you didn't establish, the times you didn't choose yourself. When you finally decide to break this pattern, something magical happens. Jung called it synchronicity, that mysterious alignment between your inner world and your outer reality. Suddenly, you begin to attract people and situations that reflect your new level of self-esteem. It's not coincidence or luck. It's the direct result of having healed that part of you that believed you deserved less. But this change doesn't happen overnight. Jung warned us about relapse, those moments when old patterns try to reclaim their place. There will be nights when the temptation to respond will be almost unbearable, moments when loneliness will seem worse than the mediocrity of those furtive encounters. It's in those moments when you most need to remember why you began this journey. It's not just to have a better relationship with others, but to heal that fundamental wound that has made you believe you don't deserve to be the priority, that you must settle for the shadows when you deserve full light. Jung taught us that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that authentic person you're destined to be would never accept being valued halfway, would never consider being a nocturnal secret sufficient, would never confuse convenience with love. And speaking of love, Jung had a revolutionary vision of what it truly means. It's not that ephemeral feeling that flourishes in darkness and withers with daylight. True love, according to Jung, is a process of mutual growth, where both people help each other become their best versions, where there's no room for shame or hiding. Ask yourself, is this relationship where he only seeks you at night contributing to your growth? Is it helping you become your best version? Or is it reinforcing old wounds, confirming limitations that no longer serve you? The answer is in your body, in that tension you feel when the phone rings, in that knot in your stomach when days pass without hearing from him, in that feeling of not being enough that persists even when he's with you. Jung taught us to listen to these physical signals as messages from our unconscious, as compasses that can guide us toward our truth. You may feel fear right now, fear of being alone, fear of facing what's inside you if you no longer have this distraction, fear of discovering who you really are when you're not molding yourself to be what someone else desires in the darkness. Jung understood this fear deeply and offered us these words of comfort. There is no birth of consciousness without pain. This pain you feel when contemplating breaking the pattern is not a sign that you're wrong. It's confirmation that you're on the right path. Because the most significant transformations always come accompanied by resistance, by that feeling of losing something, even when what you're losing are the chains that have kept you limited. Think about how much energy you've invested in this dynamic. The hours waiting for messages, analyzing signals, justifying absences, preparing for those brief moments together. Jung would call this neurosis, that fixation on patterns that don't serve us, but that we can't easily let go of. And breaking this pattern isn't just about letting go of that person who only seeks you at night. It's about letting go of a version of yourself, that identity built around waiting, unconditional availability, the persistent hope that someday you'll be enough to be sought in daylight. Jung understood that these patterns persist because they fulfill a function in our psyche. Maybe being the midnight option protects you from the risk of giving yourself completely and being rejected. Perhaps it allows you to maintain the fantasy of a relationship without facing the reality of whether this person truly values you. Or maybe, on some level, it confirms a deep belief that this is the type of love you deserve. Whatever the reason, Jung would emphasize that you cannot free yourself from this pattern until you fully understand what need it's covering. Only when you identify the wound you're trying to heal with these half-relationships can you begin to heal it directly without using others as intermediaries. And this is perhaps the most powerful message Jung left us. No one can heal for you the wounds you carry inside. No relationship, however intense, can fill voids that only you can fill. When you expect someone who only seeks you in darkness to give you the validation you crave, you're looking for water in a dry well. Liberation begins when you realize that you are the source of everything you seek in others. That security, that acceptance, that love you expect to receive from someone who can't even seek you in daylight, all of that already exists within you, waiting for you to recognize it. Jung described this moment of recognition as an awakening, as the instant when we finally understand that inner wholeness can never be found in the exterior. And when you awaken to this truth, something fundamental changes in how you relate, not just to that person who seeks you at midnight, but to the entire world. You begin to see that the problem was never that you weren't enough. The problem was that you were looking in others for the reflection of a value that only you can recognize in yourself. You were waiting for someone to show you in darkness what only you can affirm in broad daylight, that you deserve to be a priority, not an option. When you finally break the pattern, when you say no to those furtive encounters and yes to your own worth, something happens that Jung would consider a perfect manifestation of the individuation process. You become what you were always meant to be, not a shadow that only exists in the darkness of night, but a complete being who shines with its own light at all times. And then, when you least expect it, you discover the ultimate irony that Jung understood so well. Only when you stop needing someone to seek you by day is when you begin to attract relationships that will value you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Not because you've changed your tactics or learned to manipulate, but because you've changed your energy, your frequency, the very essence of what you project to the world. Jung explained it perfectly when he said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." As long as you continue to resist the truth of this relationship where he only seeks you at night, as long as you continue to deny what it really means, you'll remain trapped in the pattern. It's only when you fully accept it, without justifications or fantasies, that you can finally free yourself from its influence. This is the moment to ask yourself, are you ready to break the pattern? Are you willing to face the temporary void that will remain when you're no longer available at midnight? Can you bear the discomfort of not knowing what comes next? Of not having those crumbs of attention that, although insufficient, were at least something? Jung would assure us that what comes after breaking the pattern is infinitely more valuable than what you leave behind. Because what comes is freedom. Freedom from the anxiety of waiting, freedom from constant doubt, freedom to create relationships based on mutual respect and not unilateral convenience. Think about how it would feel to wake up each morning knowing that your worth doesn't depend on whether someone sought you out last night. Imagine the peace of not having to constantly check your phone, of not having to make excuses to others or to yourself about why this person only appears when no one else can see you together. Jung firmly believed that the encounter with oneself is the encounter with the meaning of one's own life. When you break the pattern of accepting being just a nocturnal option, you not only free yourself from a limiting relationship, you reconnect with your purpose, with that internal compass that has always known what you deserve, even when you didn't have the courage to demand it. And here is the most powerful truth that Jung discovered after decades studying the human soul. You don't need anyone else to choose you to be valuable. Your worth doesn't increase when someone seeks you out, or decrease when they ignore you. Your worth is constant, innate, immutable, as true at midnight as at noon. When you finally internalize this truth, when you feel it in your bones and not just understand it intellectually, the pattern breaks by itself. It's no longer a struggle, it no longer requires effort. You simply no longer resonate with the energy of being an option, because you've remembered that you were always meant to be a priority. The path won't be perfect. There will be moments of doubt, of nostalgia, of asking yourself, what if? Jung knew this, and that's why he emphasized that transformation is not a destination, but a continuous journey. Every time you feel tempted to return to the old pattern, remember that you are at a threshold, in that sacred space between who you were and who you are meant to be. And in those moments of doubt, ask yourself, if a friend told you that someone only seeks her at night, keeps her a secret, values her only when it's convenient, what would you tell her? You would surely remind her of her worth, tell her she deserves someone who is proud to be with her in broad daylight. It's time to give yourself that same advice, that same love. Jung taught us that knowing oneself is the beginning of all wisdom. And part of knowing yourself is recognizing patterns that no longer serve you, relationships that limit you instead of expanding you, people who only want the best of you but aren't willing to give you their best. Today is the day to break that pattern. Not tomorrow, not when you're more prepared, not when he finally understands what he's losing. Now. Because as Jung discovered, the present moment is the only time in which we truly have the power to transform ourselves. Imagine that in a year you look back at this moment. Will you want to see that you continued in the same pattern, waiting for someone who only values you in darkness? Or will you want to see this as the turning point, the moment when you finally said enough and began to build a life where you are valued completely at all hours, without conditions? The choice is in your hands, and although it may seem frightening, remember Jung's words. I am not what has happened to me. I am what I choose to become. You are not the patterns you've repeated until now. You are not the times you've accepted less. You are the decisions you make from today forward, and you have all the power to choose differently. If this message resonated with you, if you recognized in these words patterns from your own life, I want you to know that you're not alone. Thousands of people are facing the same challenges, struggling with the same doubts, trying to gather the courage to break cycles that no longer serve them. I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. What patterns have you identified in your relationships? What steps are you taking to break them? Your story is not only valuable to you, it can be the light that guides someone else out of their own darkness. And if you know someone who could benefit from this message, someone who deserves to remember their worth, share this video with them. Sometimes the words we most need to hear come through those we least expect. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you want more content that helps you understand your psychological patterns and transform your life following the teachings of Carl Jung and other great masters of depth psychology. Hit the bell icon to receive notifications and not miss any video. Remember, the fact that someone only seeks you at night doesn't define your worth. What defines your worth are the boundaries you establish, the way you treat yourself, and the courage you show when you choose to evolve beyond patterns that no longer serve you. Thank you for being here, for dedicating this time to your growth, for daring to look at uncomfortable truths. The simple fact that you've made it to the end of this video shows that something inside you is ready for change. As Carl Jung would say, I cannot change anything if I don't accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. Today, by accepting this pattern for what it really is, you've taken the first step toward your freedom. And that, dear soul, is the beginning of a completely new life. See you in the next video where we'll continue exploring together the mysteries of the human psyche and the transformative power of choosing yourself always.